Okay, we need to talk about some fucking tanking and why people are fucking idiots about it and they're obsessed with it and they don't understand it. Because I'm fucking sick of hearing about this shit. I mean, I've hated the tank Nazis for years, but they don't learn shit. They're stupid. I don't know who taught them about tanking, but you engage for 5 seconds with one of these tank Nazis, you can find out pretty goddamn fast that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So Vikings 1-4. I mean, this was going on before we were 1-4. This was going on before we were 0-1. People wanting to, a very vocal. I don't know how big, but it's big. It's bigger than it should be. A very vocal segment of Vikings fans who want to tank. They always want to tank. And this is not exclusive to Vikings fans. The tank Nazis exist in other fan bases too. I'm sure there's, Patriots fans who want to tank and Broncos fans who want to tank and so on. But tanking doesn't fucking work, you idiots. It's never worked. On whatever level you want to look at it at. Now, the only time we know of, or that we pretty much know of, where a team was, and this is just NFL. There's we know teams have tanked in the NBA on purpose. The only time that we kind of know of where an NFL team has tanked on purpose is Miami, because our defensive coordinator is our defensive coordinator right now because of him losing his job with the Dolphins because he wasn't going to go along with it. He didn't want to tank on purpose. But people don't even seem to understand what tanking is. That tanking, purposeful tanking. We're talking about tanking on purpose. We're not talking about just being bad. Every year there's lots of teams that are bad. And that, sadly, that might include the Vikings this year. But tanking is a purposeful act. And that's got to start. And if you're going to tank on purpose, that has got to start at the very, very top with the ownership. The ownership's got to sign off on it. Because, what's going to happen to a coach and a GM if you tank? They're going to be on the hot seat. They might lose their jobs. Players are going to lose their jobs. Other coaches are going to lose their jobs. Who's going to sign up to do that? I mean, nobody's got that level of job security. Certainly not a second-year head coach, a first-time head coach, and a second-year GM, first-time GM. No one's going to fucking sign up for that shit. Also, no one was going to, they've already said competitive rebuild. You can laugh at it all you want to, but they are not planning to on a tear down and build it up that way. But these fans are expecting the Vikings from the top down to sign off on losing on purpose in order to try to get a higher draft pick. Where is the evidence that this has ever worked in the NFL? Where? If you're talking about just being a successful team, and Christ, you could go back decades to this, but we'll just try to keep it into the 2000s. The franchises that have been the successful franchises in the 2000s, none of them got there through tanking. Not one of them. Teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Patriots, the Eagles, the Saints, the Packers, unfortunately, going down the list. None of these teams became, long-term successful by tanking. None of them. You know what happens to most teams that are really bad? They stay bad. Sometimes for literally decades. Like the Detroit Lions right now, they're loving life right now. Their fans are loving life. Well, and maybe we'll see what ends up happening with their season. Maybe they'll take it all the way. But you know what? They've had to be horrible for over 20 years in order to get to this point. And they even had a season, them and the Browns, they both had seasons where they literally didn't win a game. And I don't think they were tanking. I think they were just bad. But they both had seasons where they were 0-16, didn't win a game, got the number 1 pick, took a quarterback, which is what you have to do. Well, how did that work out for those franchises? It didn't. The Lions with Stafford, they never even won a playoff game. They only made the playoffs, I think, maybe 3 times, and they never won a division. Cleveland won a playoff game against kind of a washed-up Steelers team. And of course, the quarterback they got, Baker Mayfield, he's already on, his 4th team since then? Because he went to the Carolina and the Rams, and now he's with Tampa. So, if that's the ultimate goal, is to just lose every game so you get the number 1 pick and get a quarterback, well, that doesn't always work out. It really doesn't. I don't know why people still insist on believing this horse shit that the only place that you can get a quarterback and get a really good one is at the very, very top of the draft. Where are the top of the draft quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls recently? Almost every Super Bowl, in the last decade has been won by obviously not by a quarterback, because it's not always the quarterback winning these games, but they've been won by quarterbacks who were either lower draft picks, like obviously Brady, like he didn't win one, but Jalen Hurts, like Russell Wilson, and even Patrick Mahomes was, I believe, the 10th pick in the draft. Or they've been won by quarterbacks who were acquired as free agents or in trades. So there's your second Peyton Manning Super Bowl. There's your Brady with the Bucks. There's your Foles. There's your Stafford. Probably forget somebody in that list. But now there are good quarterbacks out there right now who are taken at the top of the draft. There's guys like Josh Allen. There's guys like Burrow, and maybe Trevor Lawrence. It's a little early to tell if he's going to be worthy of that draft selection. But you're going to tank to get that. You don't have to tank to get a quarterback. If that's your whole goal in life, if your whole mission in life is just we have to tank so we can get a quarterback at the top of the draft, well, you're wrong on both counts, because tanking doesn't work. And it doesn't guarantee you're going to get a quarterback, and you could get a better quarterback later in the draft, even in the first round. Later in the first round, Aaron Rodgers was a late first round pick. Lamar Jackson, I believe, was the last pick of the first round. There's so many different ways to get these guys. I mean, laugh all you want. Kirk Cousins was a 4th round draft pick. And guess what? If you tank for a quarterback, you're going to be goddamn lucky if the quarterback you get is better than Kirk Cousins. But people don't want to listen to this shit. They are utterly brainwashed. I don't know who started the whole tanking thing. I don't know where this started. Where, I'm sure it's a media thing where, someone talked about tanking, and it has been done in the NBA for sure. And I don't believe it's even worked in the NBA to the point that that it's worth it. Of course, they have the draft lottery, so you could tank and get the worst record. It doesn't guarantee you're going to get the first pick. Maybe they need to do they could do something like that in the NFL. Although I think that they would just rig that like they rigged the NBA one. But the only reason some of these people seem to want to follow the Vikings is so they can watch them tank. Well, they're never going to tank. And they shouldn't tank. You want these guys to just throw away their careers. They may never get another. You blow it up, you tank, whatever. Guess what's going to happen? If you're probably going to have some losing seasons, and we may have a losing season this year too. But I'm saying if we tank on purpose, you're going to probably end up with a bunch of losing seasons, and then it's not going to matter what the plan was. This coach and GM are gone. These other coaches are gone. The players are gone. And then, God forbid, it gets out. You become kind of a joke like what happened with the Dolphins. And hey, the Dolphins look pretty good right now. They got a quarterback near the top of the draft, but they haven't won anything yet. Maybe they will. I mean, the odds are that eventually there's going to be another quarterback who's taken very high in the draft, maybe even number 1, who wins a Super Bowl. And Burrow's gotten to a Super Bowl. Josh Allen's gotten to a conference championship game. But again, there's so many different ways. Like the undefeated 49ers right now are rolling along with Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, 7th round. You see this stuff happen all the time, and people just do not get the point. And they're apparently never going to get the point, because we have to keep dealing with these tank Nazis who won't listen to reason, who don't understand logic, who don't understand facts, who have no understanding of what tanking even is. They don't understand the history of football and how these things work. Like, yeah, there's been plenty of times where teams have gotten somebody at the top of the draft because they were just bad. Being bad is just, that's just how it works sometimes. Sometimes you're just bad. And maybe that'll happen with the Vikings this year. Maybe we're going to end up having, one of those seasons where we barely win any games and we're drafting at the top of the draft. And if we want to take a quarterback there, fine. Like, I'm completely okay if this coaching staff and GM, if they're in a position to draft a quarterback or even trade up for a quarterback, and they want to do that because they've identified their guy that they think is going to be the guy. That's fine. I'm all for it. If it doesn't have to be Caleb Williams. Everyone's obsessed with Caleb Williams. Nobody has any fucking idea if this guy is going to be the next Patrick Mahomes or the next Jamarcus Russell. Nobody fucking knows. You just don't. Like even some of the young quarterbacks playing out there now. Bryce Young doesn't look good. CJ Stroud does look pretty good. Anthony Richardson looks pretty good, but he's always getting hurt now. So it's like you just don't know what's going to happen with these guys. And then there's also just the factor that it's not as simple as any quarterback was going to always be good no matter who he got to work with. You think Patrick Mahomes would be everything that Patrick Mahomes is right now if he had gone to some, I don't know who else was drafted highlighted. Like I say, he'd gone to the Bears. Would he be the same quarterback with the Bears? Probably not. But he got into a great situation. Also, good situation where he was allowed to sit for a year, and learn a little bit. That's helped a lot of quarterbacks over the years. Very few get to do that anymore. But it's just so many different ways to do this thing. To find quarterbacks, to get to build rosters. Everyone's obsessed about, you have to have a rookie contract quarterback. Well, sure, if you could pay every single player, the minimum, and then, have all this cap space, that'd be great. But how often do these quarterbacks on their first contract, their rookie contract, how often are they good enough to really be the leader of a team that goes all the way or goes deep in the playoffs? Mahomes is a fucking unicorn. He is not something to model yourself after, because it's not going to happen again. There's never been a guy who's gotten into the NFL and been what he is right away like that. It just doesn't happen. Almost every one of these guys, it takes a while. You have to learn as a quarterback. Like, Peyton Manning, it took him a while. It takes time with these guys. There have been some guys who have won early. Those guys usually win early because there's other factors on the roster. Like Russell Wilson won early because, they had put together a pretty good team around him. And they were able, and he didn't carry them to that Super Bowl that they won. That was their defense. And people are like, then you get a rookie contract quarterback and you can just sign him. Well, maybe you can. Maybe you can make good signings, but you still have to do a good job building the roster. You still have to do a good job drafting. You have to do a good job before you even get the rookie quarterback in there, because you unless you want to just have a bunch of lean years where you don't have much of a roster and your young quarterback gets the shit kicked out of him, because that's happened to a lot of quarterbacks too, where they maybe they had some potential, but generally, if you're being picked at the top of the draft, you're probably going to a bad team. They probably don't have that much. So, but tanking is not a solution. It's not a strategy. It just isn't. There's just no evidence in the history of the NFL that tanking works. Being bad might get you something. It might. Or it might just mean you're going to continue to be bad. Like even the Bengals, they get Burrow, but they were fucking terrible, barely scraping into the playoffs a handful of times for 20 years. The Lions have been terrible. And of course the Lions, they aren't where they, wherever they are now from drafting quarterback. The quarterback they have, they traded for him. The best teams in the NFC right now. 49ers, seventh round pick QB. Eagles, second or third round pick. I forget which round Hurts was drafted in. Lions, they trade for a guy. Seattle is pretty good so far this year. They found Geno Smith as a free agent. And before that, they had Russell Wilson, who was a third round pick. It's so many different ways. It's so stop rooting for losses. They may come anyway. This has been a hell, just an absolute hellscape of a season so far. We've already lost games we shouldn't lose. We're probably going to lose some more that we shouldn't lose. And maybe this will just be a season where we're bad and the whole way. And maybe that will put us near the top of the draft. But that doesn't guarantee we're going to get a better quarterback at, say, if we're picking 5th than if we were picking 15th. It just doesn't. And even if then if you're lower in the draft, you have to trade up. No one cares. If you trade up for somebody and it works out, nobody is ever going to care what you had to give up to get them. Nobody's ever going to care. They'll care if you trade up for the wrong guy, but no one's ever going to care, if it doesn't work out. And look at the 49ers traded a whole bunch to get Trey Lance, and he flopped. And they're doing just fine because they got another quarterback. This probably is the last year for Kirk. I mean, realistically, especially if they have a losing season, I don't see them bringing him back. I don't know if he would be interested in a shorter term deal, a cheaper deal, just to be the bridge guy for a year or two if they draft somebody. I think ideally you want a guy to sit. I think you do want a guy to sit because it's so rare that guys are just great right out the chute. It's just so rare. You're not going to get the next Patrick Mahomes because there may never be another Patrick Mahomes, and you don't need to tank to get. The Chiefs did not tank to get Patrick Mahomes. So, all right. I wish the tank Nazis would just shut the fuck up already. They don't understand anything. They're really irritating me, and it's only going to get worse if we keep losing games. But even if we go on a winning streak, then people are just going to be like, these same people are just going to be like, oh, we're ruining our draft position. No, you're not ruining anything. You're not ruining anything because your draft position doesn't matter. For God's sakes, we drafted Justin Jefferson at pick 22 or something like that. The draft position just doesn't matter. It's how you draft. And a lot of it's luck too. A lot of it is just, you get the right, you evaluate the prospects, you get the right guys. We haven't obviously been doing that too much recently, and even before Kwesi, we haven't been doing a lot of that, and that's part of why we're where we are, because of some pretty bad drafting. And so, but just stop with this tank Nazi crap. Stop with the tank crap. It's not going to guarantee you anything. It's not even going to help you. All it's going to do is it means that you're going to be paying more for a rookie. That's all it really is. You're going to be paying more because if you draft at the top of the draft, you got to pay the guy. That's all it is. There's so many different ways to build a team, and I'm not even saying the Vikings have been doing it the right way. They've done some things right, but some things they haven't done right, and that's why we are where we are. There's the examples of being bad and it paying off are very rare. Usually just means you keep losing. don't want the Vikings to keep losing. I don't want them to keep losing this year. But if it happens that way, if that's just how it's going to be, that we're going to be bad and lose a ton of games and pick it near the top of the draft, so be it. But we're not going to do it on purpose. And expecting a whole organization to do that on purpose is ludicrous and absolutely insane, and people need to fucking realize that.